song.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you. Welcome to the podcast, guys. I have such an exciting guest here today. This is my beautiful angel, Wee, and she is just the most beautiful spirit I've ever met my entire life. And a lot of you guys loved my podcast episode where we talked all about her telling me I needed to get a white lizard in my office. And I mean, it blew up. I got so many DMs. Everyone was like, who is she? We want to hear from her. We want to know her. And so we have her here today.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
And of course, Tyler.
Hello.
Yeah, no, it was crazy because I'm sure you saw, but your text came while we were in these chairs recording an episode, like mid-episode.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And so Savannah was like, stop.
I was like, stop the camera.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is important.
Yeah. And then we
I
went
didn't know
directly
that.
from here to get the lizard.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I know. And
Amazing.
she's been like so amazing. Like I just feel such a connection with her. Like she's perfect.
Yes, simpatico.
Yeah.
It was love at first sight.
It really, really was. And it's so funny because it was the only white one that they had there. And also too, usually albino lizards are pretty pricey. And this one like was on sale. And I was like, it's meant to be.
That's amazing.
I
So
know.
I didn't even know they existed until I had that dream.
That's
and I
so
had to look
crazy.
it up. And I was like, yeah, I think Savannah needs this.
It's amazing.
I don't know where you found it, but
Yeah. We literally called like 5 places. I'm like, do you have a white lizard? Do you have a white lizard?
Yeah, no one in Fort Worth did. We had to drive to Richardson.
Yeah.
oh wow.
Yeah.
It was worth
It was
it.
a trek. It was an adventure.
It was an adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but today I'm going to let her introduce herself, give you a deep dive on like who she is, how she got into this, and then we'll tell you guys the story about how she actually predicted Tyler coming into my life, which we've talked about on the podcast, but I feel like it's just going to sound so much better coming from her too. And yeah, let's get into
So
it. Tell us everything.
Hello, everybody. My name is Wee. How did I get into this? It's kind of hard to say. I think that first and foremost, what I do is I help people. I kind of guide people through the most traumatic moments of their life. So I guess you could say trauma specialist, more metaphysically. I try to stay away from labels, though, just because I feel like this industry is so just like aesthetics. A lot of people get drawn into it for the wrong reason.
Yep.
And they exploit it. And so it's really kind of hard to be a part of it but be so singular, stand out, unique and different within it. So first and foremost, it just started at a young age. I think when I was like 3 years old.
Wow.
I didn't start speaking until I was 5, but when I was 3, I started getting like weird dreams, visions. I didn't know how to process everything. And then when I was 5 and started talking, I would just say crazy shit to my parents.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, you can
absolutely.
we cuss a lot. Yeah.
but like I remember being 5 and like one of the first conversations my mom says I had was like describing what the hospital looked like where I was born. And
That's
she was
so
just like,
crazy.
this kid is weird. And so I was treated like I was weird my whole life. And so like when you have a gift and when you're really close with God, you kind of learn to hide it because people are really creeped out by it. They don't want to necessarily hear, your grandma says hi, she loves you, or whatever it could be.
Yeah.
So I've always, from a young age, started really suppressing my gift. And ironically, it just made it stronger and stronger.
Wow.
And it wasn't until, with the thing about tarot, so that's the tool that I use. I got into that when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
And was just really drawn to this woman who was an artist who came around my parents. They owned art galleries. And so she would come around and she was very hippie and flowy and had crystals and everything like that. And so she gave me a little tarot deck and I read it and just instantly felt connected to something. I didn't necessarily understand the context of Rider-Waite and what they were created for. I was just like, I wanted to learn inside out the meaning of everything in the world, pretty much. Insatiable curiosity. So I started really just studying them and never thought of them as like, I'm going to read your fortune or I'm going to tell somebody what they're going to do or what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I really just liked the art and studied.
Because they're so
the
intricate and
meaning.
beautiful. Yeah.
And so it wasn't until like age probably 12 that people started coming, like adults, like my parents and their friends would come to me and be like, okay, is my wife having an affair? Like it would be the craziest thing. Like people just knew that
you had this sense of knowing.
Yeah, I had a gift, I guess you could say, but it was all word of mouth and it was kind of like too much for me. I was too little and I was too,
Yeah.
I started to get, although I believe God put this on in my purpose to help people solely. And I love that. But I was really at a young age, I didn't want it. I wanted to turn it off, and I wanted to kind of
I can only imagine
normal.
How overwhelming that is, like just developing as a 12-year-old and then having something so special. And then also like just the generation we grew up in, people are, I feel like, more welcoming and inviting of this kind of stuff. But like back then, and especially in Texas too, you grew up in Texas, right? Like they would like look at you like were like a demon or something crazy, you know?
It's very interesting because I was raised kind of half and half by my grandmother. My parents traveled a lot and ran businesses, and so I would spend like summers, weekends, holidays, everything with Grammy. And she was up in Amarillo, like the Presbyterian church was just very strict and very they just had their singular way of looking at the Bible and religion. And so I always kind of felt like my weird quirky little interests were kind of more like secret, and my Grammy always loved and accepted it, but she would always encourage God. She would just had little things that she would say to me to encourage me and make me feel connected to both my spirituality and the miracles and the mystical things that would happen that weren't really explained in church. But then she would also give me the music of church and like the community of church. And so she showed me like I had this beautiful support system
on both sides,
of more spiritually, but I was religiously brought up. So Dallas, Texas, like you said, it's very Baptist. The area I was in growing up in school, everyone was like, I forget what it's called. I think it was like Young Life or something like that.
Young Life.
And it was just almost like more of a popularity contest. And it was like...
less about God.
Yeah. So the Presbyterians in the church I grew up, it was like service was everything. We were missionaries. Like we were being groomed to be missionaries and to just serve. And so I thought that was Christianity. And then I learned really quickly, like there's some really evil infiltration. And it was like around high school time that I started to see like, I think there's a lot of really evil Christians that are just kind of like abusing people using, I don't know, just the corruption of it all.
Yeah.
Like you said, like if you have really good intentions or a really beautiful gift, people can, especially being so young, adults will kind of see that and want to use it for their motive and objective.
1000%. Because you're innocent.
It took me a long time to get to where I'm at today, but basically became a missionary after college.
Know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, with my Grammy. We did it together.
That's so sweet. That is so sweet.
Yeah, she's the strongest angel that I have. So she, we traveled to Ireland, London. We traveled around and did missionary work, fed orphans and homeless people, and it was amazing.
Wow.
And so because she's such a strong part of my DNA and in my spiritual DNA, and she was the most incredible Christian I ever met in my life. And I mean, she baptized me in the Guadalupe River. I mean, I just feel like in my heart and soul, there's that Christian spirit. I just feel so connected to God.
And I really love that you say that, because I think that's like the biggest misconception when you tell someone I'm very spiritual as well, and they're like, oh, then you're not a Christian. And I'm both. I'm very much in tune with like spirituality and who I am and just, the greater wonders of the world. But I'm also a Christian and I also believe in God. And people are like, how can you be both? And I'm like, you 100% can, because when you look deeper into it, like everything's connected and God is a part of that realm and people just don't realize it.
I'm so happy that things are changing because like we were saying, and it's been really fast that the changes happened. But when we were kids, it was like, you were kind of scared to say, like, if you watch certain things or if you like were shopping at the mall and you walked in Hot Topic, or like there was always a Christian judgment to where it was like so strict and so hardcore. I just don't really agree with people telling other people what. There's two things. One, I don't like when people talk for God. I think he will speak for himself through others maybe, or through miracle, but like to say that you're the authority on what God meant or what God means or what God wants, you can't really do that. And second of all, like I'm more fascinated with studying. I feel like I could study the Bible for the rest of my life, and even the books taken out of the Bible and all types of ancient Sanskrits that I'll be studying for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So anyone saying that they know for a fact and they're the authority on any type of religion or scripture is just, I'm very skeptical. And I think we should.
I think it's acting on ego and not acting on God, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the same exact thing, though, has happened in the spiritual community. Actually, last year, I went through, 2023 was extremely spiritually traumatic for me. I went through a weird experience in my life that I'll never go through again, but you kind of got to see it to believe it with, they'll be nameless, but a local wellness community, spiritual type of environment that I didn't know at the time was basically like a witch coven. And I didn't believe in that kind of stuff. Because again, I think God is the ultimate power. Anyone who wants to do like a little magical spell, it's kind of manipulation. You're not going to get the results. If God's going to make it happen or not, it's not really you making it happen.
Yeah.
And I think it's a big sin to play God. I just think that's one of like the most dangerous things you could do. It's not good. And the ultimate sin is like taking pleasure in someone else's pain. Really, like those people are really drawn to spirituality, and they'll use that and like
dark magic,
keep people in the pattern of like suffering in a way.
Wow.
By telling them, you know, you're in this cycle and you just have to let go of what doesn't serve you, but then it's okay because then you can just like start anew on the new moon and do a little spell and like all these weird things that kind of keep you locked in these patterns that aren't really productive. And then what you find is it is kind of like spiritual abuse because people will still feel like this void, and they'll come to me and they'll be like, I've been, you know, I'm on the pattern and I'm doing all these things and my birth chart says this and I'm just still suffering and I'm depressed and I'm going through this and that. And we have more access now than ever and more acceptance of religion, spirituality, but we're kind of like still missing the magical ingredient. And I think it's just love. Like, as cheesy as that sounds, but we have a world that gives love without truth and truth without love.
Yeah.
And if you have love without truth, it's not really love. And if somebody tells you the truth without love behind it, it's just hurtful.
Yeah.
So we just live in a time right now where we don't have the two working together, and that really is like the magic ingredient.
So profound and beautiful.
It's just what I believe. But I hate to see people, when we're at our most vulnerable and we need help and we go to someone and we say like, hey, how do I get it? If you're lost, you're like wanting direction. It's just really a shame that people are financially monopolizing on other people's confusion and suffering. And so that's why I try to stay away from telling people, you know, like, I'm going to fix their problems or I know what to do. I try to do my best to help people, first to counsel them where they're at, but also to get them to see for themselves or to get them to connect to God so that they can start to break those patterns in their life. Because if someone gives me permission, you know, to read them or to read their birth chart or something, I have my own views and practices, you know? So I don't traditionally subscribe to astrology or to the ideologies that kind of exist because, like I said, I've been studying all of them all my life. And so energetically, like energy just does not lie. Yeah. It doesn't lie. And so if you're trying to use these labels and use cycles and evidence to kind of like manipulate what you want truth to be or what you want to be true to you or what you want the client to think is the truth. It's just, I'll never do that. Like, I'm not going to do it. And so that's why before I work with people... Your
ethics are amazing. That's why we get along.
Yeah. That's there's two things that I love most about you, and it's your ethics and your dedication to learning and the science behind what you do. And I think that's just something that more people should have a passion for because... Another thing is, like, with what we're talking about, like, spirit work or soul work, like, it's work. Like, it's not just bypassing and saying, like, oh, well, I have this crystal, so now I'm just going to release what doesn't serve me, and now everything's okay. Yeah. Like, it requires a serious work that you have to build up that stamina for. And, you know, I would encourage everybody to kind of, like, think outside the box. Because that's one thing in the past couple of years I've really started to, what I thought was, from far away, I thought it was red, and get up close and it's orange, and it's like a million different shades of orange, and you thought it was a flower, but it's not. It's a flamingo. Like, there's just so many things that we see from the far as possible. So we think that we know these north and south and east and west, but whenever you really start to break things down and you see the deeper layer of how much interconnectedness there is in the world,
so much,
you let go of those prejudices.
Yeah.
And you can actually start to think like, okay, well, maybe I need to go back and visit religion again, because like a lot of people have spiritual trauma and they have religious trauma. And so therefore they will become a little atheist in a way and think like nothing's real, or agnostic. And I don't necessarily think that's the answer, because
pointed at you.
It can be a trauma response sometimes. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with us as a collective saying like, hey, we've been doing this wrong and we're kind of traumatized. And
or just not knowing too. I think like if you've never had that experience, like it's hard to believe in something when you're just like, oh, like that's what everyone else is doing, and then you like go to church or you go do whatever and you like don't feel that connection.
Exactly.
I think it like develops so much later, and everyone thinks you get it from just like childhood and stuff. But
that's a great point, because it is almost the same thing as skincare. Whenever you give a recipe for someone, there might be another client that doesn't need that same recipe. And so it's the same thing. And I don't mean that to say you can cherry pick and be like, oh, well, God doesn't mind if I sin and do this, but then I can do that and whatever. I mean, it's really about what works for one person isn't going to work for you, because your life path isn't the same as that person. And I believe that God gives all of us unique and special tasks and gifts for each other. Like God puts it in our hearts. Okay, you're going to help these people this way, or you're going to be of service in this way, or your purpose is whatever it is, or whatever your talents are, really. Like the biggest problem is, I think right now we've got two things. One, the one size fits all mentality in our spirits, because we've broken that cycle in so many things. I mean, if you look at the diversity in the world and you look at how now they're starting to study science in women's bodies, it's like, yay!
You're like, thank God.
Yeah, finally. But they are starting to make things unique to the person, but they don't do it with spirituality. Now it's almost like spirituality has been hijacked by capitalism to make it this same thing that was the problem in the first it's just recycling a problem, really. And the second thing is people wanting that instant gratification. I mean, I think we all know like convenience is really starting to kill us when it comes to our spiritual health, because just going to like a moon circle isn't really going to do it.
People want quick fixes with everything.
Yes. And I think that is, again, another trauma response. It's not anybody's fault, because everybody's so overworked. They're exhausted, If you look at how people live their lives, I mean, a lot of people will stay so busy with like a million different things in a day that aren't necessarily productive to their purpose. They're staying busy because they're being told, okay, if I go and I do this like women's event, or I go to this protest on this day, and then I'm going to go to work, and then I'm going to go and do a family event, and then they just pack their schedule so full with what society is really saying a productive person does, but then they burn out. They don't feel productive. They don't feel like they're in their purpose, and they're not happy, and they don't like what they're doing, but they're doing everything right. And so it's really frustrating. It's kind of like people that have acne and they're like, I'm doing everything right, but there's like that one missing thing that you can...
And then it's everything. That one missing thing is always like the golden nugget, the golden ticket, to like getting that result. And
spirituality is harder to pinpoint with certain people, because there is so much uniqueness in the experience, to where most practitioners that do what I do, they aren't even necessarily... I think that the problem is a lot of them have great spiritual talent. They have the ability to see. They've got vision, but they don't have the bedside manner. They don't have the psychological strength and the flexibility and adaptability to understand what people actually need. And it goes back to that truth with love. Whenever you can tell somebody the truth with so much love, because that truth is going to maybe sting, maybe it's going to be painful. I mean, some of the work I do with people, they don't like what I have to say. They don't want to hear it. And I know that.
Well, it must be so hard.
And it's really hard. You have to do, I mean, it's incredible amount of like discipline and fortitude to sometimes get the messages out so that, but ultimately, I mean, God will give that if he's put it on their heart to accept it, it will come, but it's just impossible to do instantly. If you want it, and I always tell people, be really careful and vet your practitioners, because if you want something instant, the only way to really create change instantly in your spirit is through trauma, and you don't want that. So, trust me, I mean, someone who's been through it, you know, like God has taught me a lot of lessons through trauma that I could have avoided, but I guess I needed it at that time to learn, because I was really hard-headed or really blind, choosing to just not look at things.
Yeah, or the same like lesson you'll get. Like, and that's something I've learned about myself. Is sometimes I feel like the same situation will happen like 5 times to me. And I'm like, it's because God is like, you haven't learned, you know, from it. So I'm going to keep putting you through this until you like fucking wake up and like see and get what you need out of it, because you haven't learned that lesson yet.
Totally. And I do feel like that's something that pays off though.
Oh,
like, once you kind of, like a baby learning to walk, once you stand up and you start moving, you're running, and the next thing you know, like, it pays off so fast to where you blink and the kid is like jumping in the pool and doing all the things. So
true.
It just takes some work to get up on your feet though, and it's hard when you have people around you, or you have a system, or you have a spiritual guide that's kind of pushing you down and putting you back down on your belly. So I always tell people too, like, what is the intention? Because a lot of times if they're coming and their intention, you know, like I have one client who's really wanting to build up her intuition, and I think a lot of people are I'm starting to realize a lot of people right now, I think, are disconnected from their intuition. And I don't know the exact reason why, but I think a lot of it has to do with like the little lies we tell ourselves. You know, if you tell yourself a bunch of little lies, your subconscious isn't going to trust you. You know, you're going to start.
People like that, and that's the scariest kind of person, is one that like you like almost feel bad for them and not angry, because you're like, they just totally manipulated themselves, and they like gaslight themselves into thinking like that they did right in the situation. Like they truly fully believe in their truth. They cannot step outside of themselves and see who they really are, what they've really done, because they literally have lied to themselves and told themselves that they aren't that kind of person that everyone else is like, you are, you know?
Yeah, that's a dangerous territory. I think there's a funny meme I saw recently. It's like whenever the narcissist starts to learn therapy words, it's like the abuse just amps up.
It's like even worse.
And some people, there's a lot of that, to where people just refuse to accept any type of accountability, really. I mean, honestly, it requires so much responsibility to be a Christ conscious person. To not take things personal, really, none of us are enlightened. None of us are angels, earth angels like we want to be, unless we're praying for our enemies, and nobody wants to hear that. And even if you're not a Christian, just knowing that, you know, the person that cut you off in traffic, that they're suffering, they're in a hurry, they have something to do, they aren't thinking, like, they're not in the best place. So therefore, why do we want to make it worse on them? Like, we're recycling that energy. And the more...
I love that you say that, because recently I've just realized, like, everyone that's ever hurt me, anything that's going, like, it's projection. Really what it is they're projecting how they really feel and they're hurt, you know? And when you start to not take things personally and realize, like, this person isn't doing this because they absolutely hate me, it's because of something that's going on at home or something that's going deep down inside of them. And I feel like that for me has made situations just like not make, I'm so sensitive, and you know this, I'm such an empath, that like things would like absolutely hurt me. And being a people pleaser and wanting people to like me, like it would be like my downfall, you know, if someone didn't. And the second I started to realize, like, okay, this is all projection, this actually has nothing to do with me, and like, you know, I'm just gonna like let them feel what they need to feel, and like it has nothing to do with me at the end of the day. Like everything that they're feeling has nothing to do with me. It's all projection, and it's all just work that they haven't done through themselves. And I think that's like the most important thing. And I also love that you talked about intuition, because this is something like I think Tyler didn't really believe in like intuition. He's very logic-based, extremely logic-based. And I've made every business decision I've ever made has always been a gut feeling. And I mean, the one time, and I talked about this on the podcast, that I didn't listen to my intuition, I lost $40,000, and I was trying to people please instead of listen to my heart. And I'm like, what could go wrong? Like, they really want me to do this. Like, I really like these people. And like, I just had this inner knowing of like, don't do it. And there was no logic to it. And I'm like, why am I feeling this? Like, why? Like, this seems like a good idea. Like, these people are so nice. Like, why am I feeling so strange about it? And then when I didn't listen to the intuition and I was like, just go for it and just shut that side of me off, I mean, it was the worst decision I've made in a very long time in my business. And I was like, I told Tyler, I was like, I'm never not listening to my gut again. And I think it's hard too for like kids that have like such a strong intuition, because I've always had that growing up. Then if you have gaslighters around you, or people being like, oh, you're being dramatic, or oh, like, boyfriends being like, oh no, like you're just overthinking it, or just friends, that they stole your bracelet, but they like gaslight the hell out of you. You're like, no, my dad bought this for me 3 years ago, and like that they didn't, and like you just know. And I think my whole life I had so many people, whether it was my parents or boyfriends or friendships that I had, just like making me feel crazy. And they're like, there's no logic to this. Like, you don't know this. Like, you're just like assuming these things, like, and just gaslighting me. It like really shrunk that gift for me. And it took years in me separating from those kinds of people for my gift to build back up. And now, like, I would say, like, my success, I base a lot of it. One, I'm obviously very self-motivated. I work hard for it. I'm good at what I do. But a lot of my business decisions are intuition. And it sounds crazy. No. But it's not like looking at numbers. It's not analyzing data. It's not like looking at market trends. Like, it's literally just like, does this feel right? Yes or no? And that's literally it. It is so simple. It sounds crazy.
No, one thing your evolution of releasing projection has been beautiful to watch, because I remember when I first met you, I instantly felt you in my heart space. And I think like one thing is that if I hadn't have tapped into my heart space with the eyes, I would have just seen a very strong, independent woman that works hard and is incredible and beautiful and confident and intelligent. And when you see all that at face value, you think, oh, she's invincible. Same thing with celebrities. I mean, how many people drag, Kim Kardashian around the mud all day, every day. And it's because they think, she's untouchable. So therefore, we'll just use her. Yeah. And so there is like a tax that you pay, I think, for being sometimes in this world so driven, and I don't even want to use the word like confident or anything like that, because it has nothing to do
visibility
with that.
Too. It's just putting yourself out there.
The vulnerability that it takes. And number one, like, so whenever I had this tragic accident back in December, my heart pumping was the only thing that kept me going. I mean, I was pretty much out of it, but the heart just wouldn't stop. Wow. And it was in that time that I learned more about, I have a really good friend who went through open heart surgery this year. And so this year has been like a theme around the heart. I've been really like concerned and researching and reading. And it's fascinating because there's new science starting to come through that our heart is like the second brain. Wow. And our stomach is like the third brain. And like our heart, our stomach, and our brain are literally all three working together.
I believe that, because I feel like when I've gone through pain, I can, like, when they say a heartbreak, like I literally, like, my heart hurts. Like there's pain. Yes. Like it literally hurts. And then funny you say about the stomach, because in skincare and everything I've learned is just how the gut and the brain is so connected. And if you have your digestive tract off, it like can cause anxiety, depression. Like there's just so many things connected with that, even with your own skin. So I love that you said that. It's really interesting.
It's our body's way of telling us, something's up. It's our body's way of communicating with us. And back to like the logic thing. I mean, women, a lot of people are like, women are from Venus, men are from Mars. But evolutionary, I mean, women were gathering, men were out hunting. So the logic is a part of that instinct, that human evolutionary need to be more on the objective to go out into the world, and they're adventure seeking, and they're using logic to maneuver the hunt. And whereas in women were gathering, but women were also all together in community. Men would go out by themselves and hunt. Women would stay together and there's a lot more of that intuition that was cultivated around also raising children and feeling when the child was not okay, because there was a energetic cord that the mother and the child had. So the intuition has always been kind of the forefront of superpower for women, and it tells them, men have that logic that makes them brave because you guys know all the information. So therefore you know what gambles to take, and you know what's going to give you success, and you're driven, and it gives that confidence. And men have I think more of a skepticism to the intuition, because they will run into a burning building to save their child. But the woman's intuition, if it's saying that the child is climbing the tree, and if the husband runs into that burning building, he's going to be gone, she can work with the husband to keep him from running into that burning building if there's no child in there. But if logic is appearing as if the child is in there, there's a reason, they work together. And so there's a way
interesting.
And they're just energies, right? Masculine, feminine energies. Sometimes women tap more into their logical masculine energy. And it's okay for men to tap into their more feminine intuitive energy, because whenever they're in unison within ourselves, we're able to be more whole, and we can show up in the world. Yeah, it is. It really is. So and there's nothing wrong with having an imbalance either, because that's another thing about balance. Like, a scale doesn't stay perfectly balanced all the time. Some days it's like this, some days it's like that, and it's an ebb and flow. And I really love the element of water. It's so healing. That's another thing that we connect about, water moon babies. But it's so healing whenever you can feel the calmness of the ebb and flow. And you want to think of it more as like a soft rocking rather than the extreme tsunamis. I mean, water can be really choppy, really crazy and erratic and scary. And if you don't start to incorporate that intuition, it can start to get real loud and scream at you. And then, chaos can kind of break out when the logic and the intuition are extremely imbalanced, because you're suppressing both. That's when usually a lot of imbalances at the extreme level start to happen. So there's little ways that you can incorporate it. And the first thing I would say is everything you naturally did is what I would tell somebody to do. So it's like amazing how you're just so connected to the energy already, because it takes a little isolation to get that balance. And it takes a little bit of, knowing when it's a projection, and when it's a time to be accountable.
Yes.
Like, that is so important.
Yeah. That is so important.
Yeah, the one thing I've learned is to trust her intuition.
Yes.
Yeah, and he'll be like, do not do this. And I'm like, I'm telling you, like, I have to. And I'm like, I don't know
so
why,
important.
but like, I just have to. And you just have that feeling, and not just like inner sense of knowing is like the most peaceful thing. And once I decided to stop questioning it, because it made me crazy. And I think honestly, like, I'll say for sure, like where I grew up, my upbringing, and just like some passed down behaviors and thoughts from my parents obviously contributed to some of that. But I think most of it was just self-doubt and like not trusting myself. Like, how can you, when you have these feelings and you push them away and you suppress them for so long and you don't listen to your intuition, it's just like you're in this vicious cycle and like confused. And like, I think a lot of people that are depressed, they're just so confused that it just drives them to sadness.
Well, another thing I know about you that I love and respect so much that I wish more people would get is that confidence that they're, maybe envying or they're misjudging, it's earned, that is earned through overcoming those really hard moments, like those adversities when you're being bullied or you're being ostracized or you're being gaslit. It's so isolating. It really, and at a young age to go through it, it's traumatizing because
it makes or breaks you.
Yeah, your brain isn't even fully developed. And so if it's having to do so many gymnastics around just the growth process, there really is something to say about people that, like the flower that grows through the concrete, someone who just overcomes every adversity thrown at them, that requires so much discipline that when you see them like shredding their stuff, if you would not hate on them and think maybe like, wow, where's that glow coming from?
Yeah.
I want to have what they're having.
Inspired.
Yes. And to inspired to ask questions, like, hey, how'd you do this? Or how did you overcome that? Or just to be more curious rather than think that because of these weird society standards that we say is beauty or success or whatever, if somebody else has that, that doesn't mean that they're a target and that you can just take out your frustration from not obtaining those things that you really genuinely want, that you can't be mad at the results you're not getting with the work you won't do.
Yeah. And I can say firsthand, like I feel like that is such like women against women, human nature. Like almost we see another beautiful, successful woman and we want to find something wrong with them so that we can feel better about ourselves at night and be like, oh, like she might be this or that. Or like, but I bet her husband's cheating on her or, you know, whatever it is. And it's like, that's such a toxic cycle. And I used to be like that 1000%, especially in high school. Like I would hate a girl because she was prettier than me and skinnier than me and had, you know, everything else going for her.
Really?
Yes. When I was younger, for sure, I would have so much jealousy because I didn't love myself. And it took me a while to like realize like, you know what, like I need to be happy with who I am and like be inspired by that and like want to learn like how does she keep up with herself? How does she do this? And again, be more curious instead of more, well, I have to find something wrong with her so I feel better about myself. And I think that was like such a big change for me in adulthood and just let me grow into the woman I am is when I let go of all of that like hate and jealousy and just like mean girl mentality. And I think, you know, a lot of it is just society that we grew up in. You know, you'd see those magazines and it was like Britney Spears, like Say Light on the Beach, you know, like, and it was just like always
tearing women down.
Yes. Like the magazines did it, the media did it. And so when you grow up, I mean, our own parents sometimes did it to us too. And and again, like I always say, I don't hold anything to my parents because they did what they could with what they had. And I feel like just the sense of knowing, knowledge, and just love that is in the world now could be better, but it's a lot better than it was back then. Like our parents did the best with what they had. My parents didn't understand mental health. Like my parents grew up with parents that were like tough love is love, like, you know, and like didn't really hug each other and like just didn't come from loving homes. It wasn't like that. And so it's like, how can you expect someone that went from that and didn't have that opportunity to grow to like give you what you needed? It's like just a cycle. And so I think when you don't get so upset about it and live in your head and like be like, I blame my parents for everything bad that ever happened to me, I look at it as like, I'm thankful that my parents were the way they were. And again, like my parents are amazing parents. Like, of course, did they make some mistakes or comments that shaped me into the woman I am today? Yeah, but it was for the best, you know, like a lot of the things that I think hurt us make us stronger. And like, I'm thankful for it. Like if my parents, you know, just thought I shit butterflies and rainbows, like I'd probably still be living at their house and like working at a yogurt stand or something because I wouldn't have had that fire inside me to work hard, be something, do better. And again, every kid is different. Some kids do really well with that type of parenting where their parents are just like very affirmation every single day and like, you're amazing, you're wonderful. But some kids, like they don't. They become lazy because of it. They think that, you know, they have a huge ego. Like they don't think that there's anything wrong with them because their parents think they're perfect. And so I think, you know, again, that's the other thing is nothing's black or white. So it's just so different for each person. But for me, I think all the experiences I went through, like definitely I'm thankful for them. People always ask if I have regrets in life. And I've had so many things that I'm like, I wish that didn't happen. But when I look at it, I'm like, if it didn't happen, I wouldn't be like this. I wouldn't have gained. I think everything that you lose, you gain something better, you know? So it's almost like if you don't have anything to lose, like there's no room for you to gain any gifts or wisdom or new learnings. So you have to like give something aside, go through that, drop that down the bucket, and then you receive something better.
Totally. So, and that goes back to that balance thing of the water juggling. You have to sacrifice a little, you know, to get a little. And sometimes sacrificing our relationships with our parents, sacrificing the relationship we didn't have, sacrificing the love we didn't get, sacrificing their projections onto us, letting all that go, sacrificing it to God, because God really does, he can handle all that better than we can. Truly. And so whenever we like surrender is such a huge thing too, surrendering to like, okay, well, whatever age you're at, if you're 12, if you're 20, if you're 50, saying, okay, well, things haven't gone this great or things haven't been going how I'd like for them to. What can I do to change it? You know, and being uncomfortable is an incredible motivator. It's almost a mandatory motivator because, like, if you're sitting on a fire, you're going to have to get up and move. And if people go their entire lives without ever feeling the heat, they're not probably moving and shaking too much. And that's fine. Like, there are different strokes for different folks. There is no one way to do this thing, but there are things we don't want to do, and that's creating those cycles where we take our parents' abuse and we give it to other people, or use our pain as a credential to go hurt other people, you know? And like,
or be a victim forever.
Yes. Like the victim mentality is such a enslavement that I think what you probably realize too is that when you do surrender that stuff and you say, okay, well, what do I have power over? And you start using that power to the full capacity, there's so much freedom in that. You're free. You get free from other people's, prejudices. You're free from their opinions. You're free from...
You're untouchable.
Yeah, you really do become untouchable. And it's engaging for other people because at the end of the day, if you look at the amount of people that are struggling compared to with where they're at and reaching where they want to be, to the people that have it made and on easy street, the number is, there's much more people in need of lots of things. I mean, just needing help, wisdom, guidance, love. A leader, like I think right now is like an unprecedented time when like we need more genuine leaders, ethical leaders than ever before. And so your experience has shaped you. God really took his time shaping you and chiseling you and making you into the perfect leader for the people that are going to need your guidance on to how to break these cycles. Because we're all kind of just breaking the cycles of the generational trauma. I mean, like our parents were raised in that generation where there was no therapy, there was no... I don't know. If I hear like what my nieces and nephews say to their parents and the engagement, and it's like, it's great because they are breaking all these cycles, but it's just crazy to me how fast things change.
Literally just like one generation.
Yes. In one generation, we did like 10 generations worth of work when it comes to autonomy and breaking prejudices and with acceptance and allowing kids to kind of be more independent with their mind and their bodies. And it's a great thing. But then now it's kind of like, okay, well, you have that. What are you going to do with all that power? Like you've got this power to be anything you want to be. But I mean, I would encourage people to get so intimate with themselves to where their purpose becomes undeniable to themselves. And they're not looking at an app or other people to try to emulate what they think they would want and what they think they should be doing. Because I think that's a big problem right now, too, is people just feel a little lost because they're, again, back to the scheduling thing. If you keep your schedule busy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 7 years, when did you ever have the time to truly... I had a professor in college, he said, talent is developed in privacy, and where there is struggle, there is life. And it just always stuck with me because talent is kind of developed in privacy. I mean, whenever you're alone and you're focusing on something, you're really cultivating an essence to where you can integrate what you're focusing on to where like if you read a book in private, you can talk about that book and you can tell somebody about the book and you can, keep all the wisdom of that experience that you had in private. But if you're only reading books by going out in a huge group full of people and reading out loud and taking turns all screaming at each other, you're probably not going to retain the information as much. Yeah. And so I think people are scared to kind of be alone because
I think so too. It's scary. And I was that person for a very long time.
It's hard for me to... It's really hard for me to kind of relate because I've always loved being alone.
Yeah,
so,
y'all are definitely, I'm like, but I feel like I like to be alone in my own ways. Like when I'm like ready to shut off, then I am. But when I'm not, I'm not. But I love that you say that because I like something I've always noticed. Like when you meet somebody and you talk to them, like you can tell if they've gone through something, like if there's depth there or if they're just someone who's like never really sat and thought and or gone to therapy or like done any like inner work, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Or like
we say they've hit all green lights in life.
Yes, and it's just like they're cruising. Great people, but it's just like it's so hard for me to connect to people like that because I see so many clients and I have those that come in that's like, girl's never struggled a day in her life. Like, God bless you. Like, I'm glad, but then they don't have... It's almost an immaturity and a juvenile mindset that they have. And they also are just very unself-aware and like they don't mean to be. And so like, of course don't judge them, but I can totally like, I just feel that energy. Like I'm like, you haven't lost somebody or like you haven't gone through depression. You haven't gone through bullying. You haven't gone through anything.
In my experience, those are the most intolerant people.
Yeah.
They've had a perfect life. Their imagination isn't malleable. They're not able to think of, like, a bad day to them is like, I don't know.
Like their Starbucks drink wasn't there, or like
it wasn't
the
made
line was too long and they couldn't go, or their drink was wrong.
There was traffic.
Yeah, like just constant
little inconveniences.
Yes.
It can really, so in one way it's kind of a setback because it does kind of create a weakness in them to be able to really like make a change, like be an innovator in this life.
Yeah.
It kind of impedes that, but also that tolerance thing, those are the people that usually, because their imagination doesn't let them think of what, like for instance, if they're sitting across the table from someone who's lived a Benjamin Button lifestyle, like they're an orphan and they've broken both their legs and they've gone through the most amount of physical pain, mental, spiritual, emotional pain a human can endure. They can't even accept and validate and give space for that person who needs it the most. And so a lot of times, again, like you were saying earlier about releasing people's projections and gaslighting you, some of the people that do the most amount of, or spread the most amount of trauma around this world do it by incompetence. They do it by just being kind of like trudging in the house with mud on their shoes.
Yeah, they just are so unaware and so self-aware. And I think for me, you know, my biggest thing that I always say is like when you tap into your subconscious, that's how you make real changes, because people are like, oh, like I want to change this about my life and this about my life. But like you have to like sit and really like get that into your subconscious, and then it becomes more of a conscious thing, right? Because you're not having to think about doing it. It's just like programmed in you. It's like almost reminds me of like when I danced growing up. Like when I went on stage, I wasn't consciously dancing. Like it was all my subconscious. Like I was not even, I'm not even thinking about what move I'm doing next. My body's just moving.
Yes.
You know, and I think
muscle memory.
Yeah, muscle memory. And then just too, like just tapping into that subconscious. Like I was talking to one of my clients this week, and I was just talking about how like at nighttime, like before I go to bed, like I kind of do like a replay of my day, and like I just kind of, this might sound crazy, but like I literally can like, I feel like I'm up here and I'm like, there's like a screen down here and I'm just like watching like every interaction that I've had, and like I go through it and I'm like, how could I have responded better to this? How could I have done something better? I don't know if that's normal or if other people do this, but I've always just visualized my entire day, and just like, even if it's like 1 minute, I'll just do a replay and be like, this is how I could have done this better, or, you know, I wish this conversation, like I had said something different, or just like being self-aware, because I feel like some people don't ever just fucking think really about their interactions or how they come across or what they're doing. Like they're just waking up, getting on TikTok, watching TV while they get ready, going and listening to music while they're driving, and then they go and they talk to people all day, and then they come home and like they listen to music while they're at the gym, and then they watch a TV show, and then they get on TikTok, and then they wake up, and it's like you've never had time to like think and be like talk to yourself. Like I love talking to myself. When I drive in silence 99% of the time, and I'm just like in my head, like having conversations with myself, which people might think that's like psychotic, but
well, no, you're clairvoyant.
I do.
And
what's that?
Clairvoyance is whenever you get downloads through vision. I mean, it's kind of like if you're bird's eye viewing your life, you're able to see more of like the weak spots and the stronger spots, to where you can kind of do a more honest evaluation. But also, when you're that present, it's almost as if you are kind of futuristic, or like you're foreseeing. And people kind of think of clairvoyance as like you're able to see the future.
Okay, is that why I'll have a dream that I have a conversation or do something in my dream, and then I wake up and it happens like 2 days later, and then it like freaks me the fuck out, because I'm like, I felt like it was so real in my dream. I'm like, I thought I already had this conversation.
And the reason why I believe, these are just my beliefs, but the reason why I believe God gives you that gift and that power is because not to get too biblical, but like Earth is literally a spiritual warfare. We are here there's a battle between dark and light. And it isn't that simple to just say good and bad, because the road to hell is paved with great intentions, but there's a lot of, God gives us these tools as armor. He knows that we're going to need them. He knows that you're going to need help with navigating through the spiritual warfare. So those gifts are really there to help you navigate and to be a better servant and be a better warrior for God, so that you can be in your purpose. And it's not necessarily about converting people, because I don't think that's, if you're trying to do that, it doesn't really work. It kind of, minds and hearts are going to change when God allows it, and if it's meant to be. So again, it goes back to that manipulation thing. So it's not necessarily about
and
that.
recognizing you can't control it.
But being in your purpose, like just whatever. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a humanitarian, but being in such a divine purpose to where you're just convicted. You're convicted with what you do, and you have that confidence that is seeming to come from somewhere else. And it's your spirit, because you have a body, you have a heart, you have a brain, but you also have a spirit, you have a soul.
Wow.
And they need just as much love and attention as our skin does, truly. And so, but with all that, you got to protect it too. I mean, you wear your SPF to protect your skin. Aww. You have to put on your spiritual SPF.
I love that. Like, we're making a t-shirt. That's amazing.
And that can be, again, unique for everybody. Some people like to put a crystal in their bra, and that works for them.
Yeah.
But it could just be a little prayer. It could just be the subconscious power, like you said, having that subconscious clarity.
And I love that you say that too, because I think even with like religion and God, like something I always struggled with was, you know, I grew up a competitive dancer. Sundays I was at dance class, and so people, especially like I had a neighbor growing up, and they're like, you know, the kind of Christians that are a little more judgy, and like, you know, if you don't go to church every Sunday, like you're not a real Christian. And like, again, like I always felt like I was undeserving of God's love, and I wasn't a good Christian, and I just had, you know, society and everyone telling you like, oh, like if you're not going to church, like if you're not praying every day. And I remember I'd like wake up sometimes with so much anxiety at 2 a.m. be like, I didn't pray before I went to bed. Like I'm going to go to hell. And like, that's not God. Like God doesn't feel that way. And same thing, like with being spiritual, like you don't have to carry around crystals or do all these things to be a spiritual person. It's like, you just know your relationship with God is your relationship with God. I'm a Christian. I know God loves me, and I know I'm going to heaven. And it's because I talk to him when I talk to him. And like, he's always there with me. I don't have to be at church every single Sunday or sing the songs of God every single Sunday to be good enough to be one of his children, you know, like my love for him and his love for me, like I work it into my life in the way that I can and what works for me. And like, again, it's so different for every single person.
Yeah. He knows our intent.
Yeah.
He definitely does. And that's why he knows the intent of the nefarious people that are using the church to do bad things. He knows that too. And so I'm not like the most Bible verse person. I don't know why I'm feeling this way. It's like Soul Sunday or something, but I remember going through a really bad situation when I was a little girl, and my Grammy gave me like a little piece of paper that had Romans, I don't know, 19:20, I think it was, something about God saying basically, you know, I will handle everything. Like, don't pray for your enemies. If they're hungry, give them food. If they're thirsty, give them water. I don't remember the whole verse, but it's basically, you know, surrendering to, you know, God to make the moves for you, and
karma too is so real.
Yes, to move with the intention though, to move with, you know, God. Yeah, I believe he loves us and we're his, you know, babies and stuff. But I think that I've seen his wrath. I've seen the power that he's capable of that makes any demon look like a little ant. So I also, I wouldn't say I fear God at all, because I don't. But if I was a person that was out here in these spiritual streets doing people dirty and lying, cheating, stealing, killing, I'd be very terrified of God right now. And so I don't try to ever convert people or save them, but I do see some people to where I just feel, because I know, and so I feel the pain that they're feeling, but that they're going to feel. And I wish there were more people that I could kind of like warn and, you know, I guess, you know, bring them to love and to just make them feel that unconditional love that they've never felt before. But a lot of times, you know, the devil knew God better than anyone. So he is able to replicate and give the illusion of God better than anyone. So sometimes, like, they'll logically make all the sense in the world because it feels just like God, but it's an illusion. And if you don't have that spiritual strength, you're not going to get through it, and you're not going to be able to see it. And that's how, I mean, I'm speaking from experience. I have gotten many a times by only moving with love. And it kind of took me a while to realize. I grew up and was like, wait, everybody's not peace, love, and healthy and happy for each other. No. This is crazy. Like it's still at times very hard for me. And like I said last year, what I was going through around all these women, very successful, beautiful, gorgeous women that I looked up to, loved and adored, were absolutely evil. Like the most purest evil. It just kind of snowballed. My intuition started doing its thing, and
you like something feels off.
Yeah, something started to feel off, and I was like, no,
they're great.
Yeah, this is love,
and that's
this
like
is
the hardest thing.
We're healing the sisterhood.
Is when you want to like someone so badly that you want to turn your blinders off, and you're like, why am I ignoring? And that's how you get hurt. Is when you have that feeling, even if you don't have logic in the beginning about it, like you got to fucking listen to it and get out and protect yourself.
Totally. So now, the problem is protecting yourself without being jaded, or loving without being gullible.
God, I feel like that's
such an amazing tool.
It is the hardest thing to navigate.
The hard lessons we learn. And so last year it was just, like I started to feel something off. But this is another thing that I will admit, because I'm a very flawed person, but I had that kind of Mother Teresa complex. I thought, oh, those sugar dumplings, I'll just love them to death.
Yeah.
No, they were killing me to death. Like it was an experience that showed me that sometimes those demons that we're so scared of, or the women or people that we look at and we think like, oh no, they're bad news, they're evil. Sometimes those are the actual angels that are just misunderstood and messy. But the person that you think, this is an angel, she's just so sweet, why is she being so nice to me? And they're kind of rocking you to your death. So it's it's getting harder than ever right now, I think, I think like the devil is just ramping up the illusionary power. But also at the same time, there's a balance to where that veil's getting thinner. And so there is more exposure, and people are starting to kind of guide. I think people are starting to listen to each other, because like right now we're talking and we're talking about things that people don't usually talk about
or want to, because it hurts and it's hard and it's confusing, and they'd rather just stick their head in the sand. And, and I think that's the hardest thing about our generation sometimes too. And even the ones before us, is everyone, it's just easier to, ignorance is bliss. And it always has been.
But one thing that comes with accountability is you kind of do want to help other people. Be like, hey, don't step in that pile of dirt. Like you want to kind of help people not make the same mistakes. So that's what I try to always do when I work with people, is tell them how to look out for certain things that I feel like when I can feel and see that somebody's walking into the same trap I did, I always tell them exactly what I wish someone would have told me.
Yeah.
Because
you save them a lot of suffering.
Yeah, it's not good. Like we're just so collectively connected to where like a blessing for a friend is a blessing for you, but a suffering for a stranger is going to be suffering for you too. So it's really about understanding that concept and accepting it, but surrendering to where it's also not our place to go out and heal everybody in the world. And we're not going to save the world, and we can't go and like take every homeless person in. And like, there's just so much going on in the world. Showing up as authentic and vulnerable and truthful and convicted in your purpose, that is the best you can do.
Yeah, because you have so many of those people, and they're impacting little pieces of the community, and then it just all around does better for the world.
And you've seen those videos where people pay for the person behind them, and then they do it, and it's like contagious, because generosity is contagious.
And karmic, what is it called? Karmic relief or karmic something?
Karmic justice, karmic,
I don't know, but I just feel anytime like I've ever done something good and I don't talk about it, I don't say anything, like if I'm giving money to a homeless person, like I'm not posting it on social media, that's like just me and stuff that I do. Or
your heart.
Tyler knows, like I'm like always have a bunch of cash anytime we go to Dallas, because I feel like the next week or the next month or whenever, like just like random blessings will come to me.
It always comes back.
And then anytime I get, because again, I'm flawed and I'm not perfect, and I might get in a way where I feel vindictive or I feel petty, or like maybe I wasn't the nicest to my husband, or maybe I was thinking about my ego more than being serving others. Something will happen to me, and it's like not like a huge negative thing, but like a setback, or like
it will cause an effect,
a bad day, or like just drama with a client or whatever it is. Like I always swear, like the more good you do, the more pure intentions you have in the world, like you will receive those blessings back in tenfold. Always.
I believe it. I've seen it. I believe it. I know it. And I think also like the good. I don't think that should be the motivation. Like, shouldn't be out there. And the problem, one thing I noticed that you and I are so much alike in is like our love language is gift giving.
Yes.
And so I've always my whole life though been told, oh, you're manipulating,
or buying
you're
love.
you're trying to control people, or you're trying to do this, that, and the other. Like, people always project their negative things because they think, well, I would only be doing that if I wanted something
in back.
So she must be doing that. So it's
I've been
really
told that
hard to, or people like, oh, well, she'll just give me lunch every day. I don't have to buy my own lunch, and they take advantage of things.
I've had that happen too.
Yeah, so we learned the hard way, but it's like at the end of the day, last year when I was going through, there was a moment where I kind of felt like, should I just change and not be this generous and giving? And I just thought about it because I'll do this just like you, the conversation in my head. And the little angel, I have 2 angels on my shoulder, and they were both like, no. Keep giving, because you're doing it from love. If you were doing it
for manipulation or for something else
and validation. And again, back to like social media, there's so many ways that has kind of changed the trajectory of how we operate and how we maneuver in life. And the people that do like post on social media, I'm feeling homeless or whatever they're doing that day, it's so performative to where, I mean, the intention is felt. Like, we can feel when someone's intentions are pure and when they're intending to be, they're intending to manipulate some type of orchestration around who their image is, because social media has made image so valuable to where it doesn't really matter who you are. It just matters what you look like you are. And you can make yourself in an image online to where you could look literally like the most perfect angel human and say all the right things, politically correct, and be a monster in the real world. So it's changed our perception so fast. Back to how rapidly we're changing. I heard a psychologist say the other day that social media has changed our hierarchy of needs. And now where it's like, shelter, food, the number 1 and number 2 needs are acceptance and validation. And it's really sad because because people will, for instance, if like something breaks out at a concert and people pull out their phones rather than help the people being hurt, they do that as a survival mechanism because their first 2 needs are validation and acceptance. So they're thinking, if I get the magical shot that goes viral, I'll get all the acceptance and sad. All the validation.
If I was literally being like dying and someone cut their phone out, I would haunt them.
Well, that's what the psychologist was saying, is that people will do that to their deaths. Like the people on the boat, and the boat is like Titanic sinking, but they're filming it. People are now doing that to their death. So it's sad because I think that I've never really felt
like the person themselves is like filming themselves dying.
Or like filming the tragedy. If like a shooter breaks out, but you have your phone and then you get shot, it could be very dangerous.
Yeah.
I think like if your hierarchy of needs is just so high up there that it has to be acceptance and validation at the expense of your other evolutionary survival tactics, we as a society are like so kind of, we should take some steps back from social media. I love social media, and I always
agree.
I've always used it as a safe space to connect and to post genuine, real content and to kind of perpetuate either information or positivity or realness whenever, maybe shit isn't great. I mean, it's real life, and if you have that real authentic personality, and it shows through. And I think that's one of the things that people will take for granted, and people will read into you and try to, because you are so honest and vulnerable, they can manipulate. There's so much manipulation around it.
Yeah.
Someone
and I feel like it was so much easier when it was like less people, and then like the more eyes, like the more you have room for judgment, or just like, people sending you like, I don't know if you believe in this, but like, I don't even think this is the right, there's so many different terms for it, but like evil eye, or just like, wishing badness to happen to you.
Well, that's one thing I really wanted to talk to you about. And I will feel it,
and I'll tell him, I'm like, I swear to God, there's a hex on me. Like, I'll have like a week where just like so many like
everything
unnecessary random shit, like literally like the dumbest little things could go. Like my favorite lip liner will break, and then it's just like but I'm telling you, it's like so many things. I'm like, someone's fucking with me. Like someone is fucking with me right now, and like I feel something's attached to me.
It's spiritual warfare.
Yes.
So what people will try to do, and they're not even conscious of it, is a lot of times you can build up karmic debt, or you could build up energetic stores, and you can store a lot of negative energy. And if you're angry about every single facet of your life, you have so much energy that's storing up that your body, your auric field literally can't take it anymore. And so what happens is it gets contracted out. And so if they see somebody who's lighthearted, who's in the light, they will contract their shit over onto you, so that it's a real thing. And a lot of people are confused and they think,
Is this like monitoring spirits too?
Yes. So it's all of the nefarious spirit. So the spiritual realm, this is why I love science, because it's starting to prove the spirituality is real. And so,
I mean, the CIA literally released stuff about like quantum physics and like just the quantum realm and everything. I mean, if the CIA is putting it out there, like, come on, guys.
It's been, and it's two things. It's like, those of us that have been gaslit our whole lives about being crazy for this stuff are now now people are looking to us to get some type of guidance through it, because it's real. It's very real. And just like there's laws in this earth realm. I mean, if you break the law, you're going to jail. There's spiritual laws. Wow. And if you break a spiritual law, the impact is way worse than anything on this earth. And so if you don't know the law and you break it, there's a little bit of leeway there to where maybe you'll just pay a fine, or you'll spiritually pay a fine. But if you know that you're going against spiritual law because you'll feel it in your spirit and you're doing it anyway, and you're trying to just disregard it, and there's a lot of ways that people will use spirituality and witchcraft to do that. And I didn't believe in any of this. I didn't really believe in Satanism because I was like this little, happy fairy angel that was just like peace and love. So I didn't even think it was real. But no, it's very real. And because I was such a open source, here's two things. One, because you and I both, we work with people, and in order to do the work that we do, we have to be open. We have to be vulnerable. We're sharing parts and pieces of ourself. Our auric field has to be cleansed, and it has to be open. Mm-hmm. Now, when you have a cleansed and open auric field, it's magic. It heals people. It helps people. It uplifts the people around you. It's genuinely magic. But it makes you a beautiful blank canvas for those really dark energies that are so heavy to say, oh, let me throw this on her. So that's why I know so many people too that are very strong, and they're like, well, that would never work on me. Spirituality, witchcraft doesn't work on me. Bet. Wait.
Just wait.
Wait. People that say they don't believe in God or they don't believe in the devil loves, those are his favorites. Those are his number one warriors that work for him, because he can host in an empty vessel. He can host. The less you believe that something's going on, same thing with gaslighting, the more that for instance, like psychological abuse amongst women with bullying, like the high school dynamic to where one girl could, be like honor roll and be like teacher's pet and like beautiful cheerleader, perfect, but she's bullying another girl, making her life hell, but no one believes it. I mean, she could be really torturing this girl, and this girl has no one to believe her because she's up against, she's up against a giant. So that is spiritual warfare. But whenever it starts to break through with evil eye, people, they're like, oh, well, they have like an evil eye necklace, and they're like, okay, that's it, I'm protected. But it's not that simple. There are high level, just like there's high level angels, there are high level demons. There are demons that look just like the angels. There are demons that can sneak through any crack. And so when I tell people, how do you protect from that? By being in God's light, by being such a clean, spotless soul in your soul, knowing that you have done no wrong. So the two things that will take you straight to hell is messing with somebody's destiny that God has put a high purpose on. Mm-hmm. If you mess with that person, or you try to kill them, destroy them, take their destiny away, destiny swap, all that stuff, number one, sin. Number two, it's trying to it's taking the pleasure in the suffering of other people, and it's trying to do the illusion of stealing, angels' costumes and walk around in them. Like those are the two things, that imposter ability that demons will do, and then also trying to mess with God's favorite, you could call them, And so, I think God gives favor to all of us. I mean, ultimately, he loved us so much, he gave us free will to where even if you decide to be a horrible demon from hell, he's going to support you in that. And he's going to allow that energy. He's going to amplify that energy because he loves you unconditionally, not just if you're doing what he wants you to do or only whenever you're praying. It's like, I know so many incredible Christians that don't know anything about the Bible and have never been to church. It's just something about the consciousness. People that have a conscience that tell them, okay, that would hurt somebody. I don't want to do it. That is how you stay protected. Whenever you start to dilly and dabble with negative energy and manipulation and say, well, I know this would really hurt them, but I'll get a little bit of a come up, so they'll just be collateral damage. You just opened yourself up to a demon attaching themselves to your intention in your heart. And once you have demons kind of like camping out, like they're in there. They're in your mind. They're in your auric field. And so protection is about keeping your intentions pure and clean and really keeping yourself accountable with that. And then also your environment. I mean, it's hard when you're like, say at an event with hundreds of people, but, you can say a prayer and you can set the intention and your auric field is just really, it's built up like in stamina in the gym. Like if you're in the gym and you're training, right now I'm training for a half marathon.
That's
it's
amazing.
Killing me. But like I have to run. My schedule, whenever I have a run, I have to go do that run. And eventually I'll be able to, I don't think I'll do it in race pace, but I'm going to do this half marathon.
Yeah.
And I train for it. And so when I'm doing the marathon, I'm not going to be thinking about it. And it's the same thing with your protection.
Yeah.
If you spend enough time in isolation, really creating that safe space for you and God to connect, and that aura, that auric field grows and expands to where, yes, you don't have to think about it, but you will pick up on microaggressions of demonic energies. I mean, it's becoming harder for them to hide. So you'll start to pick up on it. And when you do, I would say just immediately diffuse it. There's lots of ways you could do it. Some people send it right back to them. Some people imagine like a shield.
That's
Some
what
people
I do as a shield.
I like to do like a white, bright light that's like blinding them. And I just like to make them blind. And I just ask for them evil eyes to immediately go blind, to where they're still going to be sending it, but it will start to, rather than sending it in a straight line, it'll just become lost and it'll make its way into the ethers and ultimately back to that person. But there's ways that it will affect people because like I was telling you, when your auric field has to be open in order to do your purpose, it's really hard because that's when you are vulnerable to that. The evil eye, you feel it and it will penetrate and it will start to make you question yourself. It'll start to make you feel depressed when you're not depressed. It'll make you you'll start to get all those projections to where you internalize it a little bit because you're empathic. So you'll kind of start to feel like, why do I feel this way? That's the red flag. Like whenever you feel kind of like,
you're like, why? Well, there's no reason for me to feel like this.
Or something silly, like hungry. Like, why am I insatiably hungry? Or why am I, it's spiritual warfare. It's somebody doing work on you, sending you evil eye. And so it's not so easy just to be like out of sight, out of mind. Or I bought this bracelet. Like it really, I love talismans, but it really is more about like doing that work and building up that spiritual stamina to where you want to recognize it. You want to see it. You don't want to be like out of sight, out of mind, haters go blind. No, you want to know exactly where the evil eye is coming from so you can pray for them immediately and try to diffuse it, because it's so dangerous. It's probably not as dangerous. I mean, if there's two demons sitting there playing chess, I mean, okay.
Yeah.
But if it's somebody doing that on a really sensitive, vulnerable empath, it's dangerous and it will affect them.
That's so crazy.
So spiritual protection is the most important thing. Someone who's sensitive or even just a good person nowadays.
Yeah, you're vulnerable to that.
You are.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we're going to do another episode, guys. So sorry if this was a long one. Everyone's not going to be, they're going to be so happy.
We can just keep talking.
I know. We're going to split it up though for them for next week. No. You're so good.
Not. They're going to love that.
No, they're going to love this. They're like, thank God it's not a 20-minute episode.
Yeah, because sometimes we're like 17 minutes. We ran out of stuff. Sorry, y'all.
Yes. No, they're going to love this one. All right, guys. Well, you'll catch us next Monday. We will still be here. Well, we will still be here with we. We will all be here. We will all be one. We will see you next Monday.